Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Next Door netadmin. Today I'm going to walk you through an update process that I have to do on servers from time to time. It's a firmware update process. I'm specifically doing this on Dell servers with an iDRAC. So the process is probably similar if you're using something like an HP's ILO or a Lenovo TSM or TSMP or xClarity or whatever they've got going on now. I don't remember. But the process of going through the firmware update is an interesting one because there's quite a few things to keep in mind as you go through the process. So let's just walk through that. You'll see I'm already currently logged into the iDRAC for this particular system. I've also got the Dell support page up and already looking at the server OS that I'm using, and I've ordered all of these by release date because I want to always see what's on top. Now, when you first come into the drivers and downloads section on the Dell website, it looks like it's ordered by release date, but it's actually ordered by importance. So I always click release date once and then twice to make sure that I'm doing in descending order on release date. So when I'm doing an update on the iDRAC, the very first thing I want to do is go into System Overview, and I want to go to Power. The reason that I want to do this is because I can see the firmware version on the power supplies from the inventory screen, which we'll see in a little bit, but I can't see the part number. And the part number determines what firmware it actually needs. So in this case, we've got, what, FR0KX, give or take. So then I'm going to scroll down through here to category power, and I'm going to look for, where are we? Show all, that might help. There it is, 0F0KX. And so the current version is 2133. What's the current version we've got here? 2133. That's good. These do not need an update. Perfect. Second thing I'm going to check, storage overview. Again, I can see the firmware version of the disks from inventory, but I can't see the actual disk identifiers. So, oh, look at that. We've got SSDs and physical disks. I'm going to have to check both of these separately. So let's scroll down here, get the product ID of this particular one. And then here, I'm not looking at firmware anymore, but I am needing to look at SAS drives, and I'm also going to look at regular storage, and I'm also going to look at solid state storage because I might have items from all of these categories. And then I'm going to do a find for, there we go, there's this particular one. This is firmware version J008. What is this one at right now? J004. I definitely need this one updated. Okay. So let's add that to my queue. There we go. And yes, I know that there are ways to download multiple of these at once, but I like to have them all open in tabs. It just fits my process a little better. This one, let's get this Seagate drive and check for this one. Where are you? You say you're there, but there you are. Oh, and you've got an urgent update too. Wonderful. 99. What are we at right now? Let's see here. ST37, and this is ST38. I am going to need that. All right. Okay, so now for the rest of it. You want to go to System and then Inventory. Inventory can take a little time to load just because it's got to go through and pull all the firmware. So there's all the firmware in the system. And again, you can see that this would have identified J004, but it doesn't identify the actual disk type. And the same is also true of the power supplies, if I can see those. There we go. Power supply slot 1 gives you a firmware, doesn't give you the part number. But the rest of these are pretty easy to go through. And so I just get rid of that. We'll go through them pretty much one at a time. All right. Let's get rid of our selections here. And I'm actually going to start at the bottom with the iDRAC with lifecycle controller. Because if you've got an iDRAC, that's the very first thing that you want to update pretty much. In this case, lifecycle controller is currently 61080, which is also the iDRAC version number, so we definitely want an update for that. Okay. Then I'll start back up at the top. Accelerators, don't have any. BIOS, what have we got here? 117.2. What's our BIOS at right now? 110.2. Okay, definitely need an update there. CPLD is always an interesting one. What is the CPLD at this? 111. And the CPLD that we currently have installed is 109. Oh dear. Okay. That's going to be a thing. CPLD requires special handling, so we'll look at that in a moment. Device firmware, I don't think this covers anything that I know. It's the backplane stuff in this category. I never do remember that. Currently, our backplane is at 710. There's a lot in there, so I'm pretty sure. Okay, non-expander is 710. That's good. Expander would be 120, which is totally different, and we don't have any of these switches or dual SD modules, so I don't have to worry about that. Diagnostics. Is it necessary? Probably not. Do I install it anyway? You betcha. All right, so this is 4303A28. 4301. Okay, well, 4303 anything is going to be newer. Let's make sure we get that. Drivers for OS deployment. Again, is it necessary? No. Am I going to install it anyway? You betcha. 250403. And this is 22. Yeah, no. Gonna have to get that. All right. Enterprise Solutions is just VMware, which, bleh. Fiber channel, memory, I'm not worried about. Network, Ethernet. Okay, this is always an interesting one. So we've got NetExtreme Gigabit Ethernet. That's your 1 gigabit. Your advanced Ethernet is 10 or higher. In this case, as you can see, it's 25 gigabit. We've also got some Intel Ethernet converged network adapters here that don't actually list a firmware version, which is interesting. But the Broadcoms at least are in 2231, and they use different versions. So let's start by looking for the Broadcom stuff. This is all Mellanox. Driver updates, that's important. And what you'll see here is that NetExtreme Ethernet is, again, your 1 gigabit. And where in the inventory it labels it as advanced Ethernet. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. Advanced Ethernet in the driver and firmware section is going to be NetExtreme E. So these are driver updates that I will want, but I need the right firmware version to go with them, and here it is. Here's the NetExtreme E network device firmware. So let's get that for 2321. Yeah, 2321. Yeah, okay. PDF I don't need. Here's the regular NetExtreme, also 23. So then we'll want the driver updates to go with those. Yep. And this one as well. Cool. Now, this Intel converged network thing. Is that even something that we have drivers for here? This is NIC family version, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this is an X540T2. Okay. Do we have an X540 in here? X550. And I do not see an X540 in here, which is interesting. So perhaps I will leave that one alone. Rule of thumb with firmware, if you're not sure of what you're doing, leave it alone. If you don't know what you're doing and you're trying to force firmware into things, that's a really good way to get it to die really quickly. All right, so we already checked power. We know that that's good. Let's look at SAS RAID, see what we've got here. This has got a Boss S1 at 25133024. I'm pretty sure that's the most recent version of the Boss S1 firmware. That's S2, so I'm not even looking there. Nope, that is a perk. I don't see the Boss S1 in here at all. Okay, cool. Wonderful. Well, we'll skip over that. Perk H745. 745. 745, firmware 5116. And we have 5116, 4076. This is 5150. Okay, let's get it. That was also labeled urgent. Okay. Do I see anything else that I need? No, I don't. Okay. Cool. I don't know why I'm going back there. I need to move to my next category here first. Systems management. Well, for systems management, the first thing I'm going to need is to see what we've already got here. Do we have any of the open managed stuff or Dell? We have the Dell iDRAC service module. It's currently at 5.3. All right. 5.3. They have so much in this category. It's ridiculous. Managed node for Windows is going away anyway, so I know that. This is 5.4. Okay. Let's get that then. All right. Oh, so now I've got all of the bits and pieces in all the order that it is. For each one of these, I'm going to download the update package for MS Windows 64-bit, but I'm not necessarily going to install them all from within Windows. So give me a second while I download all of these. You don't need to be worried about that so much, but I might come back every now and then to actually show you something that's important about what I'm doing. So give me a second here. And here is one of the important things that I was going to mention. This does say restart required, but a key point to note here is that it says after the firmware update, you have to perform a complete graceful shutdown to power off the system. A warm reboot will not activate the updated settings. And so when you do a RAID controller update, you need to make sure that it powers off all the way and then powers on again. I've had some success in the past with doing this at the same time as a power supply update, because also for a power supply update, the system shuts itself off completely automatically and then updates the firmware and the power supplies and then turns itself back on. That's a perfect time to do a RAID controller update. In this case, the power supplies are already up to date, So I'm going to have to do the full power off, full power on manually, remotely, but manually by controlling it through the iDRAC. So that's one of the important points to note as you go through this process. Let's see if there's any others that come up. All right, here's another one of the important ones, the CPLD. CPLD stands for Complex Programmable Logic Device. It's one of the devices at the heart of the motherboard. And because it's one of the devices at the heart of the motherboard, the CPLD can be a little touchy. There are some special requirements. If you scroll down and look under important information, when updating CPLD using iDRAC or Lifecycle Controller, the update should always be executed as a standalone task, never queued up with other updates, because it's that core piece of the system. It also has a requirement of a particular BIOS version and a particular iDRAC version. We will have both of those, so that's less of a concern. And it's definitely a restart required, so there's no ability to do it from within Windows. You can execute the update package from within Windows, but that's essentially going to be loading it into the iDRAC separately so that it can actually reboot Windows, and once it's out of Windows, do the particular update required. So that's a thing to note. The CPLD always has to be done on its own. Let's keep going here. I'm almost done downloading all of it. All right, so now I've finished downloading everything. And if we take a look at our downloads folder, we've got a bunch of stuff here now. What am I going to do first? Well, like I said, the first thing ever to do is the iDRAC. So I'm going to go over to Maintenance, System Update. I'm going to choose the file, and I'm going to choose iDRAC with Lifecycle Controller Firmware. Okay. Actually uploading this to the iDRAC does not take a terribly long period of time. The iDRAC does accept the Windows Update package. I like to get the Windows Update package because if for whatever reason the iDRAC doesn't accept it directly, I can still run it from within Windows. Again, 2 options with 1 download. But preferentially, I like to upload it to the iDRAC, and then the iDRAC can unpackage it, get all the details that it wants to see out of it, and then actually tell me that it's got everything that it needs, which it's taking a little while this time, so let's skip ahead for you. All right, we got that updated. It's interesting, in Firefox, the uploading has a percentage that tells you what percentage it's uploaded to the iDRAC, but apparently Edge doesn't do that. All right, but you can see that we've got criticality recommended. Here it is. If you do the plus sign, you can confirm the current version, the new version. Great. Select it. Your only choice is install. There's no point rebooting because the iDRAC is done separately from everything else. And then it's just a matter of waiting. It says downloading again. Why? Because what we did is we uploaded it to temporary storage on the iDRAC. Then it has to download it out of temporary storage and actually set itself up for installing the firmware update. Takes a little bit of time. You do have to log back into the iDRAC afterwards for this one because, like it says at the banner at the top, all current sessions will be closed and then the iDRAC has to be restarted. Fine. So I'm going to skip ahead again so that you can save the delay, and I'll just log back in and show you when it's completed. All right. We've finished the iDRAC update, and you can see here that the iDRAC version is now up to date. So if we go back to our job log, we can see it completed 100%. Perfect. Next thing that we want to do is I'll always do the diagnostics and drivers for OS deployment next, because those also can be installed without having to reboot the system. This new version of the iDRAC firmware does have the percentage indicator, so that's helpful. So we're going from 4301 to 4303. Good. Let's just go ahead and install that. Go back to the job queue so that we can see that it's going to go from downloading. It'll go to installing. That's from memory, so let's see if it actually does that. It may or may not, because it depends on what stage it's at when it's refreshing. It just went to completed. It was that fast. Cool. So then we're going to do the same thing with the drivers for OS deployment. Again, as it uploads, we'll be able to see that progress indicator now. So that's probably something with the iDRAC firmware version rather than browser specific. Fine. All right, let's get those installed. The sequence on the others, however, is going to be more interesting, because we know we need to do the CPLD separately from everything else. And we know that we need the SAS RAID controller firmware requires a full power off and then a full power on again. So there's definitely going to need to be a few reboot cycles. And then you have everything else as well. Okay, cool. So out of these, I have done the iDRAC with lifecycle controller. I have also done the drivers and the diagnostics. Wonderful. Let's just get rid of those so that they're off the list. The drivers, you need them to be in sync with the firmware, so that's why I do those drivers at the same time. The disk firmware for the SSDs on the BOSS and the spinning drives on the RAID controller, those will be done at the same time as the BIOS. And they can probably be done at the same time as the RAID firmware. I just have to make sure that I power it off completely and then power it back on again. Would be convenient if I could do that at the same time as the power supplies, but hey, power supplies are not updated that frequently, which is probably a good thing. Yeah, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start with I'm actually probably going to start with the ISM, but that's internal to Windows, and that's so simple that I don't think you need me to walk you through it. So give me just a second here. All right, so I've installed the service module, and that's probably all I'm going to be able to show you today. My plan is to do the CPLD firmware, restart the server, because that has to be installed solo. Then I will install the BIOS firmware, the drive firmware for both of those, the the RAID card hardware, and then the two network firmware packages all at the same time. And then I'll intercept the first boot afterwards in the BIOS screen, power it off completely, let it sit, and then bring it back online to do the full power off cycle that's needed to complete the RAID card. And the rest will just work out with that. A key thing when it's installing on a reboot, it doesn't recognize that it's completed and 100% until it's booted all the way back into Windows. So if you get to the BIOS screen, you can power it off safely, but it doesn't know that it's actually completed successfully. So intercepting it there will allow me to power it off to finish the job. And then when it comes back to Windows, that's when all of that will be recognized as having completed successfully, assuming it all completes successfully. And then I'll be able to install the two driver files, and that will be just done within Windows because that doesn't need a reboot. An important thing to note when you're actually installing these or queuing them up is that when you go to install any of these things that can only be done outside of Windows, when you highlight it, you can have install and reboot, which will have the iDRAC send Windows a reboot power signal immediately, or you can do install next reboot, which queues it up so that it will be installed the next time the computer reboots. And in this case, we know that the CPLD can't be done with anything else. And in fact, if I tried to queue something else up, it would tell me, no, you've already got a CPLD update scheduled right there for the next boot. Don't touch this, or get rid of the CPLD update, and then you can do everything else in sequence. Fine. But when you do one of these others that you can do in a batch, you can just upload one to the iDRAC and say install next reboot, and then go and add another one. And you can queue many of these all at once if you have them in the right combination. In this case, BIOS, drive, RAID card, network. Cool. The BIOS will install separately because that's a capsule file, and then it'll go to the lifecycle controller to install all the other firmware. Then it will reboot, and I'll be able to intercept it like I was talking about. That's the process, but that's going to take a lot of time, and it's something that needs to be done outside of daily operating hours. So for that reason, I'm not going to be able to demonstrate it. Plus, you probably don't want to watch because this has been going on long enough. But there you go. There's my process for going through and checking all the firmware on a Dell server and queuing it all up. Now, you might also say, what about Dell System Update? They have a program that does that. Yeah, but I've always had good success in checking it myself because I know the things that need to be done in what sequence. Dell System Update, sometimes it doesn't catch everything, sometimes it doesn't catch the conditions. You know what? I just as soon do it manually because that's part of my job as a network administrator, system administrator, however you want to word it. But if there's something that you'd like to, comment on, maybe you think Dell System Update is the greatest thing since sliced peaches. I don't know. If you want to say so, feel free to say so. The comments section is open. And also let me know if there's anything that you would like me to demonstrate or something that you would like me to talk about. I'm all ears, and I like to discuss the things that people are interested in. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. I am your next door netadmin, and we will see you next time.